What's up, everybody? It's your boy ShowtimeDr, back with a big character guide today. So I'm gonna be doing an Ian video, an Ian guide. Ian, for those who don't know, he's available through the great, super, wonderful, not flawed at all guild battle system. And so pretty much, I've got my Ian. I'm just now starting to work him up, but my guildie has Ian worked up to almost exactly how I would have him. So I kind of feel like this is Nacho LOL's Ian, by the way, so shout out to him. I'm just going to show you his Ian because I'll tell you the differences, but for the most part, he's got a really great Ian here. So, but first, before we do it, we'll go into the skills, etc. So let's do this here. So on his 1, inflicts damage equal to 72% of attack. He's got it skilled up 2 times, by the way. It starts out at 60. To 1 enemy and 2 adjacent enemies, so it's instantly a cone. That's pretty cool. And 30% chance to taunt at the beginning. Eventually, when you skilled up all the way, 45% chance to taunt for 2 turns versus 1. And you know, the attack percentage is whatever. On his 2, penetration damage equal to 140 of attack to 2 enemies, 60% chance to decrease target's attack by 30% for a turn. Restores his own health by 15%. This is a super powerful thing. It's the only way I've seen an active for a tank to heal themselves. Cordelia has a passive that helps, but Ian has a 2 that helps. Penetration damage is nice. It hits 2 enemies, and then it's going to put decreased target attack, another good ability there. Once you skilled up, the percentages are going to go up until you get to 80% to put that decreased attack, which is nice. And then it restores his health by 40 versus 15%, 40%. On a 3-turn cooldown. So if you're running someone in a dungeon that's reducing cooldowns, that's a 2-turn cooldown. Or if you have someone that reduces cooldowns like a Sid. Or in this case, in Tyle's dungeon, when he basically does both, because he is the bonus unit that reduces cooldowns as well. That is pretty gnarly. And then his ult, keep in mind, on a 5-turn cooldown, inflicts damage equal to 300% of attack to 1 enemy's, 80% chance to remove all buffs from the target, 60% chance to stun. Now, as you skill that up, the base damage and the chance to stun goes up until eventually it's at 80%. Now, keep this in mind, guys. His 3 percentage-wise hits as hard as like any DPS in the game, Morgan, Ruby, etc. But since he is a tank by trade, you know, he's if you gear him properly, he's not going to have the attack percentages that like a Morgan or someone like that would have. But still, that this hits so hard is actually kind of curious to me. But I mean, maybe he's got a little bit of damage potential, and I'm just not thinking it through properly. But you know, remove all buffs and then a huge chance to stun, that helps a lot too. So, and then right here, this is his passive once you get him. Party protection, 100% chance to grant protection to 1 ally for 2 turns at the start of the wave or turn. Protection is that little spinning thing that most tanks get on a chance on when they're hit. I think the max is 20% normally. So pretty much he's just throwing one of those out at the start of his turn all the time. So that's really nice because it's nice in the sense of it's protecting the party a lot more. But he is going to have to be beefier because anyone that tries to hit them is going to instead hit him. So you're going to have to be prepared for that mitigation-wise. Right here. By the way, the protection lasts 2 turns. The proc one, I believe, is 1 turn. That's pretty cool, too. Restores the caster's HP by 20% and remove 1 debuff from the caster if the caster's HP is below 50%. Another passive there that helps keep him up. I'm not sure how that goes if he's poisoned or whatever. Hopefully it doesn't hurt him. Most passive heals don't hurt you. Some do, like Ramu's will, but so hopefully that's not like a double-edged sword. But overall, that's great. Remove a debuff as well. So if he only has poison up, I don't know which one it does first, if it does the heal or the debuff removal first, but whichever it is, at least it gets rid of the debuff. And then reduce damage taken by 3% per surviving ally. So once again, more mitigation there, up to 12%. The damage reduction, assuming your full team's up. So that's pretty gnarly. And then on his 60, Werewolf Rage restores the caster's HP by 20% each time an enemy or ally dies. So pretty much anytime anyone dies, your boy Ian's healing up a bit. And then 60% chance to taunt all enemies upon one ally's death for a turn. As far as I see, that doesn't have a cooldown or like a limit, so it looks like if anyone dies, he's going to have a 60% chance to taunt enemies for a turn, which is pretty nice. So overall, the amount of protection that this guy can put out is significant. It's more than most of the other, if not all the other tanks in the game, honestly, when you count his protections for 2 turns. And then whenever someone's dying, that's an ally he's taunting, and his self-heal potential is crazy. So, recommendations with the skill up, always skill up the 1, usually on most tanks. Actually skill up 2 on Eamon. But you know, you want the taunt percentage to go as high as possible and the taunt for 2 turns when you can. And not to mention that your 1 is the thing that you multi-encounter with. So, right here, this will probably be the second thing I'd skill up, just to get more chance on decrease attack and restore his health by a higher percentage. And then his 3, you know, it deals significant damage, has a high chance to stun, but it still targets 1 person, so... And not everything in the game can be stunned. So, but overall, this build's solid. As you can see here, right around the 5,000 defense is what I recommend for most tanks. Health's a little lower than most for a 5-star, 183. I will show you why that is in a second. Real quick, the leadership, increase wind and dark allies max HP by 20. You know, if you got him and say Claude, you can run him as the leader. And you can use that for like your auto team or whatever you got going on. Some of the harder advent dungeons. So right here, there are some things I differ with on Nacho here. Like I wouldn't have done crit chance, but maybe his ulti, because it hits so hard, maybe if it crits, it actually does a decent chunk of damage. Accuracy, you know, you get 10% from purple stars. The rest is a byproduct of runes. So. And, you know, you are fighting lots of Amons now, so accuracy is actually not a terrible thing anymore. Overall, yeah. I mean, it still is in most things, but just in PvP, depending on if you're fighting Amon or not. Right here, defense, like I said, right around that 5k mark, that's good. Health, personally, I would get my health, you know, as close as I can to 20,000, if not higher. But, you know, this isn't my character, so they can do whatever they want. Now, you see that region. Ian already has a pretty significant, you know, self-heal mechanisms, as I showed you earlier, with his 2... His 2's on a 3-turn cooldown, 15% to start, 40% when you get it all the way. And then as people are dying, you know, he's restoring health. And then also here, if he's below 50% health, he removes a debuff and heals himself 20%. So that's entirely on you if you want to do more regen. I personally would probably go more around like 13, 12%. HP recovery and put the rest in HP increases. Right here, you know, some defense and some HP for the bonuses. There's HP. And then we just got like the all recovery right here. You see some of these runes are actually at plus 13. Now this is where the crit strike comes from. I think what probably happened is Nacho had this rune worked up already, and rather than raise a new rune, because multi usually goes better for most tanks on this slot since it's mostly an offensive slot. But he had a plus 12 and he was just like, I don't want to deal with it, so he just stuck the plus 12 on. No more power to him, that's great. Because I know I'm having issues with my runes right now too. And then on your talent, you know, the typical stuff, 20% defense, decreased damage taken from bosses, throw out that attack down on your 1. Chance to grant protection for a turn. Supreme shield to grant damage immunity. So it's your typical stuff. Now for most tanks in this game, highly recommend only get to 5 purple stars. Because, you know, it's giving you good stuff from attack speed to defense and HP, etc. Normal status immunity. Now the reason I don't say 6-star, 20% attack increase. That's usually not going to make a big difference on your tanks. Counter-Strike is nice, but is it worth 4 SSRs? You know, leveling them to 6 stars. That's up to you. Personally, I don't think it is, but you know, it's your account, your guys, whatever you want to do. So that's my recommendations there. That's the way that this character is. I will now take him out. We will do a Tayo dungeon with this setup. Let's get to it. By the way, guys, if you made it this far in the video, I'm going to be dropping some knowledge at the end of the video with a character that has nothing to do with any of this stuff, like I just said, so be waiting around for that if you want to see it. So like I said earlier with Sid's 2 reduces skill cooldowns, and also he's one of the skill cooldown bonus units in here. Or one of the bonus units that reduces skill cooldown, rather. So what I'm going to do, we'll go ahead and do a Tayo here. I will throw in Ian, or not Ian. Throw in Nachos. Ian here. Freaking find it, where is it? It didn't change on me. There it is. Okay. So I'm actually going to switch this up. If I'm running Eamon or someone else that's not Wind as the tank, I'll have Callie as the lead for the 40% Wind. But in this case, since they're all Wind, or they're all going to be Wind, you know, I'm just going to throw in Ruby as the leader. So let's get to it here. This is a showcase for Ian. I'll be doing a Callie video later, guys, so there'll be a different showcase for her. But keep that in mind when you're watching her in here. I might break some stuff down that she does. I'm saving it for her video, though. So as you can see here, Ian, he just got crit. Does it look like he got crit? It doesn't look like he got crit. Pretty gnarly. So right here, first thing I'm gonna do, just hold. Not that much damage, but 6803 is actually not bad for a tank, considering it was a non-crit as well. So you see how fat I got Sid as much health as I possibly can get him for to make his shield fatter. When this guy hits 50% like he just did, he goes ahead and he starts with his triple attack on cooldown. So Ian's 2 if you need it. You know, that's the thing that gives him heal. See how fat that heal was on top of his base regen. That was basically almost 16,000 health. And Ian's top health, if you remember it, it's right around 18k, somewhere in that area. So, as MB just said there in the guild chat, OP, even though it's probably for something else. So it's pretty gnarly, and then when you have someone like an Ian that's this tanky in this dungeon, you can do things like run Ruby or someone as a DPS lead. Attack decrease proc in there. You see all those protections going out. One of them's his passive, one of them was a proc whenever he gets hit. You want him to get hit as much as possible so that he's throwing those out a lot. And we're just wrecking him here. I do think it's funny that they made a werewolf a tank in this game. We figured it'd be like some great DPS thing, but you know, Ian's kind of the posh werewolf by design here. Kind of hilarious. As you see here, I've only really burned one healing cooldown. That stun went off right there, so Ian just sat this guy down for a turn. That's pretty nice to have when you're fighting a boss like this that can be affected by things like stuns, etc. Need to heal, there it is. I love a counter brand. Except when I fight against it. Callie's so annoying in her dungeon. But look at that deeps though. Here's your boy. Your boy Ronin. By the way, actually an underrated character. If you're new in this game and you got yourself a bunch of Ronins, Consider building him, especially for water DPS, because water DPS is hard to get early game. Because most of the good water DPS is Advent, except for Esna. Water has good supports and a tank. Not Marduk, Carolina's the superior tank. But anyways, I'll show you how this works. So you see there, when Callie's in stealth with her 1, she actually reduces buff duration. So normally this guy's buffs are still up right now because they have a 2-turn duration. But since it was 1 turn, or that it was taken off 1 round by Callie, this guy's going to ult without his buffs up, which is going to increase our mitigation a lot. And keep him targetable because he also has an evasion buff during that. So it makes managing this guy a lot easier with Callie. I'll be sure to point that out in her video as well. But that only procs when she's hidden, so hidden and uses her 1. There's a damage immunity proc right there, so next time he gets hit, or when his turn's up. Oh, actually, it's up anyways. Unless I'm procced again. You see how much more he evades there. But the cool part about having a good Ian in here is you basically don't even have to worry about this phase. You just hit for 12k as a tank, that's pretty good. Gah. I'm gonna save his 2 from now on in case I need it. Probably won't need it till I fight Tayo. And then maybe not even with that, so we'll see. You see how much passive mitigation Ian has, but he also has a lot of passive, passive protection stuff going out as well. But I'll turn the sound down a bit. You guys don't have to put up with power puncher. Gah, gah, all the time. At least not as much. So there's a taunt proc right there. Your boy Ian's just tanking like a champ. So definitely, if you're newer to this game and you got guild battle with your guild, you should be able to get yourself a 4-star copy of Ian within a week. Probably less time. So, Ian's one of the best tanks in the game right now. The only tank that heals himself to my knowledge with actives. And he has a bunch of passives that heal him, so... Get that buff duration down again. Now granted, this is a pretty well geared, you know, pretty buff Ian versus... You might come in here. You could probably actually run this with an Ian with 0 purple stars. You're just going to have to run triple support and be a bit more careful with it. Pardon me guys, I'm still a bit sick. But you see he's basically never going below, for the most part, 60%, if that. And we're already at phase 3 that quick, so that's pretty nice. My boy Tayo. By the way guys, I put out an updated Tayo advent, how I run it. There's also my old Tayo guide. So be sure to look at those. Even if you're new to this game, this dungeon's not that hard if you can get a hold of the right characters. You can run a tank with no purple stars. You just gotta hit like around 3,300, 3,400 armor. Get yourself as much health as you can and at least 12% HP regen. And then after that, 3 supports. Your supports can be like level 50 something. As long as you can have, you know, hopefully you'll have at least some 60s, but Ramuh's really good in here because you see that heal that goes off at the end of every Ramuh's turn. And then have yourself one win DPS like Ruby, you know, even someone like I forget her name, the cowboy girl. You know, you don't have to have Ruby. Ruby's just nice because she increases the heal amount. And if you run a full win team like this, Ruby also adds damage with her leadership. But usually if you're newer to the game, your leadership that you gonna want is more HP, which comes from Ramu, or more armor, which is gonna come from either Ian or Cordelia, depending who you're running for tank. But you see so far, you know, it's pretty smooth sailing. Just hit for 17k on his ult. You know, maybe crit wouldn't be such a bad thing on him. I think I'd still go multi, but... You see how much... You know, Taio's not a guy that hits soft. And Ian's just like... You know, like you're poking a giant or something. See all those protections going off all the time. That was Taio hitting 50% harder. Ian still tanked it like a champ. Those big damage immunity procs. He's just offering a lot of freedom. Look at all those freaking protections, dude. Ramu just had one before her turn ended. Ridiculous, man. Super ridiculous. So right there, that is the Sid shield, because he one-shot Cali, since Cali's standing right next to the tank. Right about half health is when he decides to ult like that. So, and then that's also Sid's proc, where he gives damage immunity and a damage buff. So if you're lucky when you go into this phase 2, it's gonna happen as soon as we kill him. Cali will have one of these spinning shields for 2 turns, and she'll be able to survive ults for a while. And be able to throw down some additional DPS. And then the cool part about Ian too is, since you can get copies of them in guild battles, skilling them up should be a fairly fast process. Like probably within a month, you should have a decent majority of his skills maxed. An almost 19k hit on his ult with the defense down debuff. Look at that, he couldn't even get through Sid's shield. Even again. Still hasn't gone through it. It expired. I just have to hope before he dies. Yes, okay, we got another shield on Kali, so Kali's gonna be able to throw down for at least 2 rounds. This dude's gonna ult back and forth. But you see it's only hitting Ian now. So when he ults that much, you see this is the first time Ian's been this low. And Ian doesn't have a turn, so now all of a sudden, oh boy, I better burn some ults. Or not ults, but some healing cooldowns. You see, since it is a 2-turn shield, Kali was protected that extra round. So we were able to keep her up for a little bit longer. If she still had her resolve, she'd be able to stay up through that, but oh well. So save us 2 for an emergency. You see how quickly we're burning through his health here. You know, he's keeping aggro pretty good. And Taio's gonna go down in a fairly short order here. So you see that run was pretty much never in doubt. And this is a 4-star admin dungeon, people. And as of now, they don't have any 4-star fire admins out, so Ian's going to be competitive in pretty much every dungeon unless he winds up with like a negative. Which usually it's the opposite element, but sometimes you'll wind up with a negative, you know, effect, like decreases or increases skill cooldowns or decreases party's health or whatever, but... So you see there, Ian didn't do bad for damage for a tank. Kept up with the supports pretty good, damage taken. Ian mitigating most of that, Callie because she was standing right next to him. And then that recovery amount, look who's second. Mr. Ian, I wasn't even hitting his cooldown most of the time on his 2. And he is not, he does not have his 2 skilled up. And he wasn't below 50% much, so he didn't proc the extra healing stuff that he can. And people died, so a couple people died, so he got the healing off of that. But you see what I'm saying as far as how ridiculous this tank is. Now, places where Ian's probably going to struggle is Callie's dungeon when it comes back, just because poison's always up, and so is brand, etc. So burst damage wise, since this dude has about 18k health, you know, you're always at risk with Callie, because Callie, you'll be doing her, it'll be fine for like 100 rounds, and then all of a sudden she'll decide in the next 2 rounds to hit you for 36k damage and, you know, 3 turns with a couple multis and a bunch of crits and dot damage and brand, etc. So he's gonna have some issues there. He might have some issues in Sid's dungeon. But for the most part, I mean, you can still make him work in both of those dungeons, just for the pure fact that he can remove his own debuffs. And if I go back and look at him, hold on. I believe it said debuffs, it didn't say any particular type of debuff. So the way that I read that, that should be all debuffs, like even the ones that like root passive, etc. does not cleanse. So hold on, let me actually... find mine. I'll look at it. One debuff, yeah. So that tells me stun, that tells me poison, that tells me brand. I'll have to actually see it in action because you know how sometimes we get bad translations, but if he can remove things like poison and brand and stuff that is not considered abnormal status, that brings up his stock huge in the meta right now. So now, usually when I'm in these videos, I tell you guys about hard counters. So your hard counters for Ian. Morgan, obviously with her ultimate that ignores defense. Cynthia actually wrecks this guy pretty hard because Cynthia, not only will she crit every time and ignore defense with her 1, but she's also silencing, which means you're not able to use your heal for your 2 or your stun for your 3. So that's a real hard counter against him. And, you know, pretty much any fire hero that deals comparable damage, although, you know, Cynthia is going to be the best. Morgan, you know, your typical fire heroes that are pretty good. Maybe Nemesis, the way that she's worked now. Leafa, especially if Leafa's Zerking. Characters like that are going to be pretty nasty towards them. Anyways, so you guys made it to the end of this video, so like I told you earlier, I'm going to share something with you. This is for a hero that has nothing to do with this, and I don't even actually have her, so I got to go to the codex, but it has been tested and confirmed that the new hero, find her here, Scrooge McDuck I call her, Isabella. Alright, so there is something that was theory crafted, and let me give proper credit because I'm not the one that came up with this. But in my video on the banner review, Skylord Venom, who's been one of the contributors to the YouTube comment section, on a lot of my videos and to the Knights Chronicle community in general. He figured something out with his character's 3, so check it out. We'll read it real quick and then I'll show you what he figured out. Inflicts damage equal to 180% of attack to one enemy and 2 adjacent enemies. 45% chance to stun for a turn. If the caster has at least 1 gold stack, consumes all gold stacks to decrease target's turn speed. Targets affected by turn speed decrease become immune to further turn speed decreases for 2 turns. Now, when I read this the first time, it's a little confusing, so I'll break it down for you. Ignore the stuff at the top, the stun, and just remember it's a cone effect. Okay, the stun's nice, but, you know, it's chance on hit. And also, when you skill this up, you know, the stun goes up to 2 turns or whatever. Gold stack is her stacking buff. So basically, she gets 2 gold stacks at the end of a turn. Consumes 1 gold stack when attacked. So basically, you attack them to remove them. Obtains a gold stack once she gets her 60 at the start of the wave. That's super important. Increases counter-strike chance by 75% if the caster has a gold stack. And on her 1 is a stun, but that's a topic for another time. So what Skylord figured out is, if you have a PvP team, and you have this character in it, and keep in mind she's wholly hybrid, you want to have the rest of your characters go before her, but you want her to be fast enough so that her attack speed is going to go faster, and hopefully your PvP team is going to go faster, other than maybe an enemy Aemon, because Aemon might proc the thing where he takes the first turn. But, so as long as she has a gold stack, which is only possible once she gets her 60 for the first turn, because this affects at the end of the turn. And as long as she doesn't get hit, so hence the reason why you want her to go first. Consumes all gold stacks to decrease target's turn speed. Targets, that is everyone in the cone. So I was confused at this at first because normally when it says decrease turn speed, it gives like 1 round, 2 round, 3 rounds. No, what this actually does is it basically erases the target's next turn. Now, there might be different calculations and different ways that it works, but it has been tested so that if you do, as Skylord Venom says, where you have all 4 of your characters go, and then you have Isabelle go, Isabelle uses her 3, and hopefully, like let's say for instance their Aemon went already, right? And hopefully Aemon didn't hit her. He might, because I think Aemon leads with this too. But she's going to basically prevent the turns of 3 characters. So essentially, like Aemon already went, maybe Aemon didn't target her, or even if Aemon didn't win, they will get 2 turns, and then your entire team will go again. And I assume after that, the turn order is going to return to normal, because probably in PvP, you know, unless you're doing that stupid guild battle PvP, this character or the entire PvP teams in general are not going to be around for 7 turns. So, basically what I'm saying is there is a way to cheese it to where your team goes twice with only up to 2 members of their team going. Now, this can potentially cause a lot of rage because I've never seen her in PvP, and I've asked people to tell me. In fact, if you see this, let me know. What does her AI do in PvP first turn? Does her AI use this ult? If it does, that is going to be pretty significant to the point of people are now going to have to start targeting her and hitting her at least once. Because you do not want her ulting and screwing up to 3 members of your team. But, you know, potentially this is there for you to use as well if you've got this character. Because we were trying to figure out ways to make this character strong. I theorized taunt runes because you want her to get hit. But she's decreasing damage, she's countering 75% of the time, and she has a pretty decent stun chance on her 1. She has charm on her 2, and she has decreased turn speed and stun on her 3. So this character potentially, with the way that they've been buffing Holy especially, has a chance to make a pretty big impact on the meta, but we shall see. It's also another potential thing you can do in your guild battle PvP team, so that's there for you, and that's your bonus, guys. So you guys, I made it to the end of the video. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. I'm going to be making one more guide for Kali right now, but this is the end of the Ian guide, so hopefully you guys now know some more things than you did. Hopefully I was informative enough for you. Share your experiences. And I am ShowtimeDr on Twitch. You can in the show notes. You can go ahead and check out the links there. Got a link to my Twitter. I got a link to my Discord. Come in, chat, get advice, share your experiences, what have you. And anyways, guys, I will see you later on. Farm hard, stay strong. Have a great day. Peace.